Hello, and welcome to Pints with Jack. Welcome to this half pint session where I'm joined by a returning guest, Gomer. Gomer, how's it
Whoa.
going?
Oh man, so good, so good. I get to be here with you. What could be better than that?
Well, I've always thought so too. Uh, Now, you're on this feed because you recently announced that you're having a bit of a career change,
Yep.
and I wanted to find out about it. So I said, come on the show and talk about it. So, before we get there, would you mind just telling people who you are, what it is you've done in the past, your various podcasts that advertise Pints with Jack and got us two new listeners? That's right,
Boom.
two new, worth every
Boom.
penny.
Yeah.
And also what it is you're transitioning to now.
Cool. Yeah. So I've been a part of a show that's been going on for 8 years now called Catching Foxes. And it is a show with me and one of my best friends, Luke Carey. We've been recording since we weren't even allowed to use his last name because he worked for the Archdiocese of Cincinnati in the young adult office. And the goal was like discussion over instruction. So it wasn't, there were tons of Catholic podcasts out there that was like, good stuff from Catholic Answers and Word on Fire and all that stuff, where it was more like, hey, here's what the church teaches. Let's explain it. Let's go through it. Any objections, any questions, and you're done. And so our hope was to tackle either faith-based issues, culture-based issues, Marvel Cinematic Universe-based issues, what have you, and kind of go through that. Luke is definitely more well-read in the areas of, especially like history and American history. That's like his favorite thing, and I'm the philosophy theology nerd. And
And non-profit stuff.
and nonprofit, yeah, so much development.
That was a long
And
season.
then I do. So we've had like 5 shows. The funny thing was, all of those shows where Luke talks endlessly about development and nonprofit stuff were instigated on me on my behalf because I wanted to give free advice to my parish development guy, and he just wouldn't call him because he was so busy. So I was like, well, I'll just ask all the questions. And then the other podcast that I do is with Ascension Press, also known as Father Mike Schmitz's podcasting network. And on Ascension, he does, or I do, Every Knee Shall Bow, with his permission, I'm sure. No, it's a weekly Catholic podcast on evangelization. We just shifted last year, about a year ago, into a seasonal podcast model. So we try to batch record a bunch of episodes and then drop them week by week, and then behind the scenes we get a month off, and then we do a batch of interviews and stuff. It's been good fun. My buddy Dave, unfortunately his wife died. She succumbed to cancer, a fight with cancer, after 3 years. So out of our 4 years of the show, she's been dealing with cancer for about three of those years, and she died in February. So we were supposed to record a whole bunch of shows in January, but she was in and out of the hospital so much. And Dave is such a baller, so I just took the show over and I wanted to experiment with the form a little bit and see what it would be like if I did a podcast solo, which can be incredibly boring. If it can, because I don't really, my consumption of podcasts has plummeted due to another topic that we'll talk about here in a minute. But but I didn't even realize this, that almost all of Ascension's podcasts are solo pod. And I was like, what do you think about if I did a solo podcast? And they're like, all of our podcasts, pretty much except for like 2, are solo. And I'm like, okay, I got to listen more before I open my fat mouth. So Every Knee Shall Bow is teaching Catholics how to evangelize and disciple people within the context of the sacramental biblical worldview. And so everything we do ties back to the basic proclamation of the gospel. And we try to encourage individuals, volunteers, parish DREs, priests, how to actually evangelize and disciple others within the Catholic context, and not just put people on a, sacramental conveyor belt. So, those are my 2 main podcasts. I'm actually experimenting with a secret third podcast. You want me to tell you what it is?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, it's totally secret. So, a buddy of mine that I used to work with, which goes to another subject. A buddy of mine, he's getting his doctorate at the University of St. Thomas, and so we are conspiring to do a philosophy podcast. And the philosophy podcast is not going to be, this is what this historical thinker thought, and this is what this philosopher from ancient Greece thought. It's like doing philosophy, right? So season 1 is going to be on agency. We recorded the intro episode, and then probably the first episode. I got to kind of edit it out a little bit more, but we have those 2 episodes, and the goal is to have like a 45-minute to an hour conversation around issues in like how to think about life philosophically. So that's our goal.
Okay. Well, I've done a little bit of Plato and Socrates, and in those dialogues, at least one person basically does a Monopoly finish. They basically throw the table over and storm off. So I'm really looking forward to seeing how your podcast goes.
Nice. It'll be real aggressive.
Yeah, well, obviously, the best philosophy always is. So you've been doing those podcasts. That's how a lot of people will know you. Right. For your day job, you have been working in a parish, teaching everything from the sounds of it.
Yep.
But that's now changing. What are you doing?
Yeah, so as of May 8th, I had my last day after 17 years of working in parish-based ministry. So I've worked in 3 different parishes, all in the state of Texas. And my home parish that I grew up in as a high school student, I spent the most time at. I did 3.5 years as a youth minister, and then I just almost hit 8 years as the adult faith formation person. And doing this work principally in youth ministry, sum total of my career in the last 7.5 years in adult faith formation has, parish-based stuff, amazing, awesome. Wouldn't have traded it for the world in terms of all my past experience, but really felt the last maybe 6-8 months God calling me on to something new, which is funny because I recorded a video about a year ago with a group, and they titled it on their own, "Why Michael Gormley Will Never Leave Parish Ministry." And then they published it 6 months later when I was like, this is not timeless content. So, so basically I'm now working for Paradius Dei, and That Man Is You specifically, which is a men's ministry. That Man Is You is a men's ministry nationwide. It's in about 800 parishes, and it's in parishes in Mexico. They got English and Spanish versions. And Paradius Dei is like the umbrella organization where they have the choice wine and missionaries to the family and other really great content that they produce. And basically during the plague, they had decided to switch to a speaker series instead of just having one guy do all the things. And they called me up because I was a local boy. It's here in Houston. And they were like, "Listen, we can't fly out. We need 2 talks. Can you be a guest speaker and do it?" And I said, "Yeah, sure. Who do you have that's doing the other talks?" I go, "Well, we got Dr. Scott Hahn. We got Dr. Mark Miravalli. We got Dr. John Bergsma." And I was like, "And then me? Like this homeless guy you found on the side of the road? Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to my Gomer Gormley." So the talks were very well received that I did. And so they asked me back the next year and the next year and now this year. So I started getting a lot of speaking events and conferences and people being like, "Oh, we saw your videos on That Man Is You." I was like, "Really?" And so they got really popular. And so he said, one day he called me up in a particularly rough day at work, and I just said, "Hey, what if you pay me peanuts to be full-time, helping me with my health insurance, and I come work for you doing all this stuff that I do on the side, which is talks, conferences, parish missions, diocesan events?" And he was like, "And you'd like wear our shirts?" And I was like, "Sure, yes." And
Free
so now
as well.
I'm working. Yeah. So I took a month off. I had just been completely exhausted, and so I took a solid month, May 8th to June 5th, and so this is we're recording on June 12th. So last week, that's right. Started full time at the church. I'm working remotely. I'm doing most of my work on the weekends with retreats and stuff. I just came back from an event last weekend, so it's been pretty epic. Yeah.
So what actually is your job description? Or to quote
My
Office
job
Space,
title is...
What is it you say you do here?
I love that movie so much. Well, I take the reports from and I give it to the engineers. No one wants to talk to the engineers. Terrible people. No, so what I do, my title's mission evangelist, and so basically I'm helping to expand their reach. So they have 800 parishes that are affiliated with them through the That Man Is You program, the Choice Wine, Missionaries of the Family. And so but they don't go to the parishes, right? So what I'm trying to do is put a living, breathing presence in contact with their parishes. So they get emails all the time asking like, "Hey, do you have a speaker that can talk at our men's conference, at our marriage retreat?" Now I'm that guy. So I love to travel. I also love to be at home. This combines both of those by when I'm not traveling, I'm hanging out at home. My wife came home today from dropping our boys off up at the church for Vacation Bible School, and she's like, "What are you up to?" And I was like, "Well, had a morning meeting, got over at 9, walked on the old treadmill, and Now I'm watching some YouTube videos to get ideas for a talk.
Wow. That is living the
Living the
life.
best life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I actually had my first trip away from my family. I think, because we got married during COVID, produced children during COVID. So this was the first time I actually had to leave the house and my family for a couple of nights. It was the weirdest thing ever. I texted a friend who will remain nameless, and I said, "It's so strange." I told him, "It's so strange." And he said, "Oh, you mean it's like peaceful and quiet and nobody's coming to talk to you while you're on a can?" I said, "Yeah,
Yeah.
that's basically it."
Yeah, the big struggle I have, so we homeschool 4 kids, right? Well, my wife does. And whenever I was working full time, I would travel on the weekends. So I was doing the stuff that I do now full time, part time. And I would travel, and I was talking to a buddy of mine, Ike Ndolo, who's a Catholic praise and worship musician and stuff. And I was like, hey, do you ever feel guilty, like being out at all these amazing places and then you call home? And he was engaged, but he wasn't married yet. He's like, no, man, my girl knows that I love traveling, and she knows that I love all this stuff. It's like my favorite part, like almost as much as the music, like meeting all these new people. And I was like, well, my wife is homeschooling 4 kids right now. And so if I get the text like, none of the kids are behaving, or no one's listening, or full scale riot, the inmates are running the asylum. And then I called her and I was like, hey, honey, I'm at Manhattan Beach, California, on the pier. It's
Missing you.
perfect weather. Yeah, love you. Big hug, little kiss, big hug.
Cool. So if
Yeah.
somebody wanted to get you out to a parish, do they need to be part of these networks? Can they just contact the
Yeah, no.
organization
Yeah,
directly?
just shoot me an email. Go to layevangelist.com, a website seen by dozens. You go to layevangelist.com, or you can just email me, Gomer, Gomer, at layevangelist. That's an unfortunate name in our culture that is de-Christianized, because they think that's like I'm like a seduction expert.
Hitch
I'm the
2.
lay. I'm like, no. Oh gosh, no. So Gomer at layevangelist.com. I do also high school stuff, middle school stuff. I did parish school stuff. Anyway, so I do a lot of that. Or if you're a part of Paradius Dei, or That Man Is You, Michael.Gormley at paradisiusdei.org. Which, how was that voice? That was like my robot announcer voice. Is that okay?
Beautiful. Beautiful. I
Nice,
think you've got a
nice.
career in AI.
Oh man, I do love that chat GPT. Oh, so much. It wrote my letter of resignation from
Really?
the
Oh,
parish.
that's
Yeah.
so
I said,
good.
write a letter of resignation to my priest leaving a church work job. And it's like, dear Reverend so and so, right? It's like, though I have cherished the many, like, insert time here spent at this wonderful church, I will be moving on. But the Lord's bless. It's like so over the top. It's pretty funny.
That's amazing. Because I recently heard that a couple of lawyers got in trouble because they submitted a brief or something, and it was referring to cases that either didn't exist or were about something completely different. And that was because they got ChatGPT to write it for
Yeah.
them.
Yeah. Have
What
you
a
ever
time to
used
live
it?
in. Oh yeah, no. Our CTO at our company, he gave us a little presentation, so I started doing a deep dive, and it's really good at generating a draft of something, like you did,
Yeah.
and it's really good
Yeah.
at summarizing stuff. As
Yeah.
soon as you get into the factual realm, you have to be really, really careful
Oh yeah,
because
it's
it will
terrible.
just want to tell you stuff you want to hear. Which I've encouraged my wife to chat GPT just to get some tips. But yeah, no, for
Tell me what I want to hear, honey. Gosh.
your job's not
Hey,
that
you
hard.
look
Just need to
nice
explain my
today.
needs. Yeah, there you go. There you go. See. But yeah, no, it's
that so
ChatGPT is really cool. Actually, it's really fun having theological arguments with ChatGPT and trying to get it to commit to certain issues that it doesn't want to commit on.
So my favorite ChatGTP story is I had someone who was in the middle of divorcing, in a horrible divorce, and he lost his job, and he said, well, I don't. And I said, have you told her yet? And he said, no, I don't know what to do. I don't even know where to begin. So I was joking with Chat. So I had it open on another screen. I said, hold on. So I said, write a letter to my ex explaining how I just lost my job. And it said, dear ex, I regret to inform you, in keeping with, good lines of communication and maintaining honesty, I would like to inform you that I recently lost my job. We will have to, and it was a very thoughtful, 2 short paragraph, probably 8-10 sentence letter. And then I said, write it in a funny way. It's like, greetings from the land of penny pinching. and then I said, write it in a sarcastic way. And then the chatbot said, I'm sorry, I will not comply with this request. Finances, especially with an X, deserves more respect and candor and honesty than sarcasm and mean comments. And I felt like apologizing to the robot for being more humane. So then I just wrote, rewrite it in Victorian English.
Oh, well,
And it did, and it was beautiful.
speaking of the wonders of language, Victorian English and Shakespeare, you recently spoke on your podcast about your Shakespearean debut. And since
Yes.
it was referring to my favorite Shakespeare play, Much Ado About Nothing.
Ooh.
Oh, it's so good. It's absolutely my
Did
favorite.
we just become best friends? I think so.
We just became best friends. Yeah, tell us about that. Because we've covered
Yeah.
your job now, and these things are usually about
Yeah.
half an hour, so we've got about 10 minutes just to chat.
Oh no! I better be quick. Yeah. So my kids go to their homeschool, but they go to this thing called Campion Hall, run by our local ordinariate parish presentation, and it's like a homeschool a la carte elective program. And one of the programs they have is theater and drama. And my 7th grader was in 6th grader was in theater, and the younger ones were in drama. And we do a Shakespeare festival every year. And it used to just be the high school students putting on, a tragedy. But this year, they wanted all
As
the
in the
grades.
category of the play, or was just that the result
Yeah.
of it was a tragedy?
Yeah, category of the play. The results are amazing, ish. And so we go, and my kids are doing it, and my daughter immediately falls in love. Right, all she wants to be is a theater geek, which is terrifying to me. And she has all of her lines. She's like assigned Beatrice. She has all of her lines memorized by the end of maybe the 4th or 5th week, which is one of the main characters, right? And this is the first time she had to do something like at this level. And, so my last day in the office was May 8th. And on May 5th, I had to take a sick day and do some stuff. And I go and I sit in at the play. And I'm just popping in, just listening, and I have 3 hours, so I'm there to help. And I immediately fell in love. I had a grin on my face watching these horribly acting middle schoolers the whole time. And I was dying laughing at the jokes. I was loving it. So I went home, and my daughter was so into it. So when I actually quit my job and left on that Tuesday, they were doing, or that Monday, they were doing some of the work, adding extra hours. And it was 3 weeks before the play. So I go over there and help out everywhere I can. Well, then I found out that the lady who's the theater director is like, Michael Gormley will be here for 8 hours tomorrow to help us with the play. And I'm like, I'm doing what? So I show up, and it's me and another mom, and then the lady who's the theater director. And she's got all the acting chops and all this stuff in her past. And so we're watching this, and I'm like, guys, I'm just working. I'm a loudmouth. So I'm like, be louder, do this, slow down. It's mostly just that. And then I discover someone recommended in the Catching Foxes audience, The Play's the Thing. Wonderful podcast. It's put on by a bunch of classic scholar nerds and stuff like that. So I loved it, and I listened to it on Much Ado About Nothing, and they do one episode an act for the most part, and I listened to it 2 or 3 times. So as I'm sitting there with the kids, now I'm jobless, and I got all the time in the world. I'm sitting there with the kids, and I'm like, Benedict, Beatrice, do you even understand what you are saying? I had 3 scarves. It was beautiful, even though it was 90 degrees in Texas, and I'm like, guys, we're feeling. But people need to know, Beatrice, that you're hurt. He just betrayed your best friend at her wedding. Right? Started getting a British accent. It was beautiful.
Well, everything's better in a British accent. But didn't somebody also get you a director's chair?
That was yes. It was it was just an outdoor folding chair that they called my director's chair. So but I had already brought my own. So but it was awesome. And so my younger kids did Midsummer Night's Dream, and my 2 kind of shyest, quietest kids were the lead characters. And there was only 6 kids, and they had to play multiple characters. So the kid that played, my son who played Duke Theseus, also played the King of the Fairies, what's his name, Oberon. And so he was playing multiple roles, and then they wrote me in to be the narrator. So I'm narrating I'm like introducing all the plays. I was just dressed up in like a t-shirt and shorts, and they're like, go out on stage and introduce the. And I'm like, oh, no, no, no. So then I read my narrator lines from the chair, but I had to introduce everything. And then my kids, the other narrator role, because they took the Shakespeare play and reduced it to like 35, 45 minutes. And so I had to narrate a ton more to kind of catch everyone up on the plays. It was funny, but I have now downloaded the Great Books the Great Courses programs that are available on Audible, and I go power walking in my neighborhood trying to lose some weight, get out, get some activity, and I'm just listening to these brilliant scholars. One guy from Dartmouth just breaking down Shakespeare, Life and Times. It's awesome.
I binged that podcast that you recommended, The Play's the Thing, and I was delighted to see that it was Angelina Stanford from the Literary Life podcast, because I've listened to her stuff because they've done a whole bunch of Lewis books, so I've naturally listened to it. And
Nice.
yeah, it's wonderful when you find your friends appearing on other podcasts that you didn't know existed.
Isn't that awesome? Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. That makes me happy.
Well, let's wrap up just in case somebody is checking up on us, making sure that we're doing a proper intellectual faith formation video.
Yes.
So they've checked the beginning, they skipped the bit in the middle when we're talking about Shakespeare. So let's wrap it up with this question. What does parish renewal look like? So you're coming to these parishes hoping to inject life, understanding, helping people deepen the faith.
Yeah.
Our own pastor, he's talking a lot about parish renewal. So from your point of view, what is it? How do you do it?
Yeah. What is it? How do you do it? Parish renewal, in large part, is a joke sold to parishes by people with dreams of making money off of a desperate situation. Right now, I'm 100%. There are so many conferences that exist out there aiming to do this. What is authentic parish renewal? Number one, do you have faith in Jesus Christ as your Lord and Savior, as the Son of God, and as the fulfillment of the history of the people of Israel? Yes or no? If your answer is yes, do you live that out in your daily life as an individual? Okay, and that means the sacramental life. That means you care about the poor. That you cannot ever neglect the poor in no matter whatever else you're doing. Right? The growing morally, are you uprooting sin in your own life? All this stuff. People want to say, like the Chesterton line: "What's wrong with the world? It's me. What's wrong with the church? It's me." Right? I'm what's wrong. So what's the antidote? The antidote is always the same: Jesus Christ and the gospel. And Jesus Christ's gospel does not need to be reformed, edited, recast, relit. Frank Sheed gives you the best, I think, for modern audiences. I'm becoming more convinced that he is better at speaking to modern Catholics, maybe, than anyone else. In terms of what he's saying and how he's hitting on it. And his big thing is like, get in the Gospels and get to know Christ. You don't know his personality because you're not spending time in the Gospels. Okay, so that's step one is, I don't care if you're the priest, the parochial vicar, the DRE, or just a parishioner, quote unquote, just a parishioner. You need to have your life steeped in Christ Jesus. Read the Gospels every day. Go to Mass as often as you can. Go to confession as often as you can. The renewal starts with you. So what do we mean when we say renewal? It means letting the old man, Adam, the sinful flesh, dying so that the new man, Christ, can be alive in you, as St. Paul said, right? It is not I, but Christ in me, right? And so the more we understand that sanctity and holiness is being in conformity with Christ, the greater we want to be like him, imitate him, and the more we want to know him. And then from that, what do we do as a parish in terms of parish renewal? The people who are praying and fasting and going to the sacraments and receiving the gospel and doing all that stuff, they need to be the ones who are inviting and investing in others. Now, as a parish, what can a parish do? Number one, the most important thing you can do is knock off stupid crap during the liturgy. And I mean knock it off 100%. If it violates any rubric, it needs to stop tomorrow. It needs to stop today. Because what you're doing is you're basically supplanting the ability of the liturgy's grace to inform the people because you think you know better. So this is me being very judgmental. But I see this all the time. People want a slick new program, and they want to pay $19.95 a month in order to change and convert everyone. And it's like, that's not how they did it in the early church. They did it in the early church by having community, and as a community reaching out to the lost, the forsaken, whatever. The beautiful thing is, when you get the liturgy right, and you get the sacraments right, oftentimes you already have catechesis right, because the people who are going to make the liturgy and the sacraments right, they already have a good head on their shoulders. So evangelization, discipleship, creating space for people who are skeptics, understanding that probably a quarter of the people in your pews don't believe even remotely close to anything on any given Sunday about what the church teaches, and then acting accordingly as a priest or a deacon who gives homilies. Like, and then your faith formation components need to reflect that. Like, so for instance, I was in charge of youth ministry and during COVID, right? And the restrictions are, 6 feet social distance. Well, we had 300 freshmen in our program. So how do I evangelize 300 freshmen? Well, I put them in 75 a class, and I had 2 classes back to back. The rest were all online, but the others wanted to be in person. So I didn't get any adult volunteers except one lady who sat at the door for safe environment purposes and did my attendance for me. And that's it. Everyone was too scared, right? And so I talked to them about doubt, faith, science, religion, faith and reason, like all of the bedrock issues that I know that they struggle with. Because if I'm going to teach them what Scripture says, and they don't even, number one, believe in God, or 2, they think religion is a silly superstition, then they're not going to want to listen to what the Bible has to say about life, right? They already think it's, homophobic, anti-woman, all the shenanigans. So it's like, well, let us speak to this. Come, let us reason together. So when you start to realize that most people in the pews, this is Bishop Barron's kind of criticism, which is, not only do we live beige Catholicism, we teach beige Catholicism. We don't make it difficult for people. And having them wrestle with difficult things and giving the church's answers to these things, or at least guidance, and then wrestling with them. Israel's name was Israel because he wrestled with the angel. You got to contend with the stuff of God in order to make it your own. So I just find that there's not a lot of that happening. It's a lot of like, let me talk at you. Let me give you 1,000 loopholes or 1,000 hoops to jump through. And then pastoral means loophole. That's where I was getting that. Instead of meaning like, let me walk with you to the gospel, it's, nah, you're fine. Exceptions made. And it's like, no, you're cheaping the sacraments. So my motto in the Department of Evangelization was to evangelize every soul within our parish boundary and those who come to our church, and to uphold and defend the dignity of the sacraments. So I've had to have many conversations with people who the church said, there's no founding hope that you're going to raise your kids, so you cannot allow infant baptism. So I call them up and be like, hey, we don't deny. We always say delay. So we're delaying your kid's baptism because you don't go to church. You have no intention of going to church. And then I say, I would like to invite you to come to church with me. Right? That's Parish Renewal. Right? If your priest has their head on a swivel when it comes to theology, when it comes to liturgy, when it comes to the sacraments, then the lay people need to step up and pursue sanctity. Right? What do you think about that?
I think that's beautiful.
Right? Right? Come on. It's not rocket science. It's not. It's extremely difficult. It's extremely difficult because there are right now no less than, I think, 10, last time I counted, Parish Renewal events, conferences, books, like all of this stuff that you can buy. And it's like those things all answer to various aspects, but they don't, in my opinion, they don't strive for holiness. It's a gimmick. And not all of them, but yeah.
It's kind of like any program that promises to teach you how to be an evangelist. If as part of that, it doesn't actually get you doing it, it's failed.
Yeah.
It's not just simply a strategy. And
right.
I remember when I was at university and I really came to my faith, and I was part of this community called Wherefore Dei, and their big things were prayer of scripture and evangelism. And I remember being told that it's like, oh, who have you talked to about Jesus this week? And I didn't even know that was a thing.
Why would I talk to someone about Jesus? Shouldn't they just know?
Well, that was basically what I thought at the time.
Yeah.
But that was wonderful. I hoped that question would get you fired up, and it did.
We should have led with that. It depends on all the Shakespeare crap. No. Yeah.
But if somebody does want to get in contact with you, what were those addresses again? They'll appear along the bottom of the screen by magic.
Oh, nice. Yes. The best is Gomer at Gomer at layevangelist.com. That's my email address that is associated with all this stuff. If you want to do something with That Man Is You, it's michael.gormley at Paradius Dei. Right, so .org. There's a wonderful organization. I just had a meeting with them this morning, and they pray so much. It is so cool to be united to a group where they have a singular focus and they pray all the time. All the time. It is amazing. Did you know that? All the time. It's beautiful.
Taking St. Paul at his word. I like it. Well, Michael, it's been a delight having you on here. I'll talk to you soon.
Ah, cheers.
Cheers.
As I drink my sparkling water.
Good enough.